This is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, session number 205. Victoria Marie Gallagher on Practical Law of Attraction.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
Welcome back to the program. It's Jason Linett here, and I've been meaning to have Victoria Marie Gallagher on the program for quite some time now, and actually had a great appearance over on her Hip Talk program, which you can check out. We're going to link to that in the show notes over at worksmarthypnosis.com. And especially getting into this topic, which is widely debated, praised and criticized at the same time, the whole concept of law of attraction. And then her sort of spin on this is putting the word practical at the beginning of it, which of course also is the name of her book, which you can check out on Amazon. And we get onto that topic in terms of what is often misunderstood about this idea. What is it that perhaps we're already talking about that fits into similar themes? And how can we put that action into attraction? And think about it in such a way that it actually, becomes practical. So it's interesting that as soon as these themes pop up online, there's a lot of criticism that's often there. And it's from my perspective that if we look at something and just immediately go directly to the negative and say, that doesn't work, that's not a thing, we kind of limit ourselves. We shut ourselves off, as opposed to asking the question, well, what can I do with that? How can I spin that idea to make that work better? How can I spin that idea to make that work better for me? I'd share there's a theme that I've not really talked much about. I've probably brought it up a few times in conversation here on the podcast. And it's where I'm going to use a word that a lot of people would use this word in a bit of a negative light. And if you go back to episode number 200 with Adam Eason, we kind of dip our toes into the topics of placebo. And the concept that I'd kind of introduce, though, is that what if we go placebo on techniques that actually work? So here's an example of this. Actually going back to a much earlier episode with Scott Giles. I've heard Scott Giles years ago talk about the idea that he works a lot with people going through cancer treatments. And at times he's using hypnotic suggestion to help the people get a stronger result from the medications that they're taking. Let's look at that. Here's the thing that is absolutely working for the person, the medication, the treatments they're going through for the cancer. And he's using hypnotic suggestion to heighten the awareness of the results that they're getting. And thanks to Scott in some way for this sort of inspirational way of looking at something. What if we take techniques that we already know are effective, which we can fold into that so many other things, whether it's mindfulness-based meditation to look at the work that Richard Nongard has put out in recent years, to take the concepts of visualization featuring, future guests that I need to have on the program and several others I've heard talk about those topics. Anyone who's talked about athletics on this program, we know these things are effective. These things have stood the test of evolutionary science, and we're still talking about them as concepts. But what if we put that appropriate spin on top of it to sell its efficacy? The same way that back to, I believe, episode number 2 of this podcast series with Michael Elner, the way that Michael would ask a client, hey, today we can do option 1 or option number 2. Which one of those do you think would be the most effective for you today? And by getting that answer, they are delivering a hypnotic contract. And by doing so, they are self-validating in advance, hey, this thing is going to work for me. So perhaps to look at this whole law of attraction concept of, again, practical, putting action to the attraction of what are the things that you're doing? What are the things that you're putting out there? And in many ways, yes, I could sit here and say I've manifested multiple six-figure hypnosis businesses, and yet chronicling all of it in my Work Smart business book, here is the massive action that I did to make that stuff happen. So rather than look at a title and just simply say, that's not a thing, instead to go, what are those ways that I can spin this idea for me? What are those ways that I can use this as a source of inspiration? And a huge thank you to Victoria for coming on this program and sharing some of those thoughts and really helping to answer some of those questions. And in terms of business success, I'd encourage you to head over to hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. This is where, in a step-by-step, easy-to-digest library, I've put together the roadmap as to how I've built multiple six-figure hypnosis businesses. Everything from done-for-you marketing campaigns to step-by-step tutorials of search engine optimization, how to work with social media in such a way that you actually get found, how to launch your own media engine to drive and attract people to your business. This is all chronicled inside of hypnoticbusinesssystems.com, and head over there right now because you can check out, there's actually an option now for an all-access pass. Check that out at hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. And with that, let's head directly into this episode. Be sure to check out the show notes at worksmarthypnosis.com for the links to Victoria's book, her podcast, and various other resources. Here we go. This is episode number 205, Victoria Marie Gallagher on Practical Law of Attraction.
You know, I was in a time in my life where a lot of things were, I lost my passion for my business. I was a stockbroker at the time, and I actually entered the world of hypnosis through the world of personal growth. I was taking a lot of personal development seminars, like PSI seminars, Landmark Forum, those kinds of things. And I discovered during that time, I just really loved a lot of the processes that they were doing to help us to get in touch with ourselves, the closed eye techniques, the visualizations, the meditations. And I loved that. And I would be out asking my friends, come take this seminar. It's the greatest thing in the world. You're just going to make all these breakthroughs, and people wouldn't go. And so I'm like, well, if they're not going to come to the seminar, then I'm going to bring the seminar to them. Mm-hmm. And so I got this idea. This was over 20 years ago. I got this idea that I wanted to make meditation recordings that people could download off of a website that I would create, and people would download and listen to these meditations in the comfort of their own home. And, people thought I was crazy, and they thought, there's no way you can make enough money, selling hypnosis recording, or actually it wasn't even hypnosis at the time. It was just meditation. And so what caused me to become a hypnotist was I was looking for a way to validate the script writing that I was doing. Yes. And I was writing these scripts, and I was like, well, are these any good? Like, how do I know that I'm going to be effective? How do I know that these are actually going to make the changes that I want people to make? And I'd start doing this long study online of how to write a meditation that's effective and, that doesn't hurt anybody. And, I just wanted to make sure that I was legit and I knew what I was doing. And somehow or another, I came across a hypnotherapy certification course that was in Las Vegas, where I was living at the time, and was opening their first class. The hypnosis class was starting in the next 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I want to do. And I even took it to the next level. I wasn't going to become a hypnotherapist. Like, I was literally just getting this certification just so I could write the scripts and sell the recordings and know that I was legit.
Right. Yeah.
But I thought, well, what the heck, this would be fun. I'm already doing this as a stockbroker. People come in and tell me about their love life and their, they'd rather talk about anything else than how much money they have. So I thought, well, why not, just become a hypnotherapist and start seeing clients and, really, really get to a point where I understood how people's minds really work. And so I opened up my office and I started, seeing clients, and one thing just kind of led to another. And I thought I was going to have time to build up my hypnotherapy practice before having to quit my day job, so to speak. And my branch manager at the time found out what I was doing. And of course, I was up and up. I was getting a business license, and that's how he found out, because they sent every single person in the world a background check form. And he brings me into his office one day. He's like, what is this? Are you starting a business? And I'm like, yep. And he's like, this is a conflict of interest, and you need to make a decision. You either have to close your office or close your new business, or you gotta, make a decision. And he gave me 30 days, and I wasn't making any money as a hypnotist yet. I was spending money. I had Yellow Pages ads. I had office rent. I had, all these additional expenses, which I could afford as a stockbroker, but certainly not yet in my hypnotherapy practice. And I said, well, we're going to see how this whole, if you think it, believe it, you can do it. We're going to put it to the test. And, I made the decision and never looked back. And, went through probably like the first year and a half, difficult times, because the truth of the matter is I was just a baby in learning this whole manifestation thing. And I thought I knew it. And the thing is that this is the stage where most people give up on learning how to manifest their dreams. Most people at that point where I was struggling would say, you know what, this stuff doesn't work. I tried and it really just doesn't work. But I knew enough to know, because I had now become a hypnotherapist, and I understood a little bit more about how the subconscious mind works now. And I got it that, I just didn't have the belief in myself firmly planted where it needed to be at the subconscious level. And so I worked on my beliefs and continued meditating and hypnotizing myself. And eventually I had that breakthrough.
I love that, especially the moment of having to make that decision. And let's kind of explore that moment. What was that thought process of, I can keep doing what's easy perhaps and is a guaranteed paycheck, and I already know how to do it, and this is all taken care of, or I can just jump ship and do something that's really in some way you had been doing, but now doing on purpose, as it were?
Yeah. And even then I kind of thought I could finagle the system a little bit. So my mind was working out another safety net for myself. So what I did is I partnered up with another stockbroker that was just a little younger in the business than me. And I said, hey, just so you know, I'm leaving in 30 days and I want to give you all my clients, and let's just split it 50%, whatever commissions you make, just, for the next year, give me 50% so that I can break free and do this. And so we went out, and I spent the whole next month bringing her to meet all of my top clients, like the top 20 clients in my book. And we had them even sign an agreement because, when you leave the business, usually what they do is just split up your book and break it up, and the client doesn't have any choice who they're going to work with. And a lot of times they'll actually leave and go to another firm because, they don't want to work with the new broker, and they've got a relationship with another brokerage firm. Usually they don't just have one relationship. So anyway, long story short, that 30-day came, went to the branch manager. I'm like, okay, well, I've made a decision. I'm going to leave, but here's Shirley. Shirley's going to take over my book.
Nice.
And he says, nope, that's not going to happen. And so I was like, oh, okay. I just spent the last 30 days going in the complete wrong direction. I could have been building my hypnotherapy business. And instead, I was trying to figure out a way to, kind of sustain the income that I already had. That seemed like the best way to do it. So, and not only that, I had to leave, we had this investment plan that, that I was putting 25% of my income into every month. And this, it doesn't vest for 2 years. So every month that you put in, the last 2 years that you put in, you don't get until 2 years later. And so I had to leave all that money on the table. But it was just like this unreasonable belief that I had in following the dream. And that is one of the reasons why I do what I do now, is just because even though like there's been those struggles, it's just been so worth it, to have that liberty, to have built something that I'm proud of, that, I can travel and go where I want, do what I want. Nobody tells me when I can have lunch or go to the bathroom, and I have this thing that I'm proud of. And I feel like if most people were true to themselves and really followed what's in their heart, the desire that they have in their heart, most people would choose to do something different than the safe road, the road to comfort that they're in right now. So I just really want to help people to break free of those constraints and the things that they, are selling themselves short on.
Yeah, and it's where, sharing that origin story at times, it's where there's a lot of people out there who are just kind of at that border, or maybe even they've been learning it for quite some time. And it's that experience now to be able to here's one method of putting it into use. One of my favorite things, though, is that we always, of course, take something from what our experiences were before, and that begins to inform what we do now. And you kind of hinted at this, that in that role of stockbroker, you were listening to the entire system of that person. It wasn't just their finances and their investments. It was that fact that you were really engaging with them in such a way that now you kind of had that whole story. And this is how you were better able to help them in terms of creating that outcome, right?
Exactly. And, there's so many things that really play into being able to, a lot of hypnotherapists, they have a hard time asking their clients to spend a lot of money, to do the full system that they need to do with them, whether it's like their 12 system, their 12 system, their 12 session system that they really, really need to work through for their weight loss or whatever it is. And because I dealt with people that had millions of dollars, I never had that problem asking people to invest in themselves, because I knew that, they were, well, of course, I had the luxury of working in the brokerage business during 1993 to 1998, where the market basically tripled. So I could do no wrong.
So it's when
people.
It's when you left that it all fell apart, is what I'm hearing.
You know what? It fell apart right after I left. And then, of course, now, things 20 years later and are in a much, much bigger place. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it did. It was kind of a funny thing, because it seemed like, right after I left, it's like Victoria left and all of our stocks are falling apart. What happened? So yeah, I left during, kind of the height in that moment. Stock market always goes up. Mm-hmm. You just have these,
events.
You just have these events, and you have to, get through those events. But ultimately, it's designed to go up, because every company is ultimately, going to become more and more profitable, year after year. So
there's a question to kind of go back here, that at one point you were looking at doing meditation programs, and then from there seeking out the hypnosis. Let's phrase it this way, if this makes sense, in terms of legitimizing it and actually knowing that what you're doing is going to serve a specific outcome. What would you say was different from moving from the mindset of meditation program to now hypnosis program?
I think just the main thing was that at the time I had the credentials of a hypnotherapist. So I figured that hypnosis is more designed to, to achieve a very specific outcome, whereas meditation just doesn't really sound as powerful. It just seems like something, that was just the thought process at the time, that, it was more designed to like help people, with these, these major breakthroughs that they wanted to make in their life, rather than, this sort of meditation that just seems like, well, we're gonna just relax and enjoy a guided moment here, and in the comfort of my own mind and, that kind of thing. It just didn't seem like I don't know. It seemed like the possibilities were better, with just using the credentials that I had of being a hypnotherapist.
So fair to paraphrase that you saw the hypnosis as being more outcome oriented.
That's exactly right. Sometimes the words escape me. But yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so going through that training then and eventually launching the business, how much of what you were doing then was focused on, let's say, on live one-to-one services versus sticking with that online medium you were thinking of originally?
So at the time, and again, my focus in the back of my mind was always on, building the website and creating the hypnotic recordings. So I spent about half of my time, usually in the evening, I'd be writing scripts and making the recordings, and during the day, I would see, maybe at the height of it, probably up to 4 clients. And I knew myself, that was about the max for me. Like, as far as, I could see more, but I didn't have the energy, based on the thing that I, was really, really working on, which was building my hypnotic recording empire.
Yes.
So, at the height of it, I saw about up to maybe 20 clients a week, and they came to me. It was really not a difficult thing for me to, to get, like a part-time, crew of people that were coming to see me on a weekly basis. And I did that for about 5 years. And then my husband and I decided to move I was in Las Vegas at the time. We decided to move to the East Coast. And that's when I had another decision to make. Do I open up another office in another state and go through all of that again? And by that time, my internet business was successful. So I just figured, well, I think this is where we say goodbye to doing, live in-person sessions. Now, do I do sessions? I do occasionally do, like Skype sessions and, Zoom sessions, with people from time to time, but I only do it in a very, very specific niche. I only deal with people who are looking for some sort of a breakthrough in their success mindset, when it comes to entrepreneurial things that, like, this is what I am doing, myself. So I know the language, I know the vocabulary. I don't typically like to, hypnotize people for weight or smoking or health or get distracted with any other topics, so I only deal with Victorias, people who are doing what I do.
What's beautiful about that is the fact that we get to choose those things that we work with, that it doesn't have to be everyone who calls in. Now, of course, for that person who's brand new, they may be kind of chomping at the bit to get out there and find that experience. And so there is something to be mentioned around. Sometimes you have the idea of what you want to work with quite a bit, and then you start doing it, then you realize, I don't want to do this anymore.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
I originally was like, oh, I want to work with kids. I really enjoy helping kids. And I enjoyed that. I did not enjoy dealing with their parents. So the schedule nowadays, limits that of kind of splitting the time similar online, splitting the time live and in person. But, we can choose those things that we work best with. And I'd imagine for someone who's reaching out to you for those things, you have programs for those now instead, right?
I do. And that's really where my focus is, look, I 100% will say that if you can afford it, then, and you have some things that you're really wanting to break through in your life, the number one thing is go to see a hypnotherapist that's certified and, can help you one-on-one. That's the creme de la creme, but not everybody either can afford that, or maybe they don't have the time for that. Or, maybe they're like Victoria, which is like a do-it-yourselfer type of person. And that is, I always found that I like helping and guiding, not even necessarily helping, but guiding the self-helper. That's
Yes.
my, that's my person. I've always been into self-help. I've always wanted that guidance. I've always read a lot of, like, I don't think I've ever read a fiction book in my life. I don't like to read books that just waste my time.
I
No.
kind of hit the same revelation a couple of months ago in the writing of mine going, I'm looking at all these other categories and I haven't read one of these in, quite a bit.
Yeah.
I saw the movie based on that, but but again, give me something I can put into action. Give me something I can actually turn into something.
Yes, I like books that you can do. I want to do something with this book. So I've always, that's obviously what I've taken after, and where I've got most of my information is, through self-help and through, things that guide you to explore yourself and become more aware and break through your limiting beliefs. And that's what, so I like to just empower people more, who are looking to empower themselves.
So from your perspective, and I'd give a sort of preamble to this, that I think there's too many people out there who are looking at online programs or sort of the do-it-yourself model and would often say, even for training, they'd go, that doesn't work as well. And instead, I think it's more empowering to step off to the side and ask, how do I make this work even better? Because there's things that a product can do differently that a live service can't. So on the training side, here's one of my training programs that there's like 6 demos of the same technique. This way you can see it on your own time, modified for different people, which you would hate me if you were in a classroom and I did the same demo 7 times over. But now in an online platform, it makes sense to go back and revisit it, on your own time, or hell, watch them all in one sitting. What's kind of your perspective in terms of how do we punch up those digital programs to improve them?
I think the thing is that we need to preface it with that you're going to get the most value out of this by approaching it with an attitude that, that if it's possible for one person to get change out of this, then it's possible for you. I mean, you can,
Very nice,
and I'm sure that you've experienced this even, where people, I mean, I'm sure you've had 1 or 2 failures, with people in a live hypnosis setting where people say, oh, that didn't work. And, and if a person is going to get success, they have to be of a success mindset. They have to want it to happen. They have to have that desire. They have to believe that they can change, and they have to have the motivation that they can change. So I like to just build it up with them right up front in the intro that also lets them know that, like, I don't have a magic wand. I'm not going to sprinkle magic fairy dust over you. You are the one that is doing the work, whether you're doing it with somebody live and in person, or you're doing it listening to this recording. It's your mind. It's your thought process. It's your saying yes to yourself. It's your saying, I'm going to take this, I'm going to make this work. I mean, you can take any tool, and there's multiple ways of looking at that tool or working with that tool. And you can work with that tool in a way that is ineffective, and you can work with that tool in a way that brings about what it is that you want. So whoops, I keep hitting my microphone. I talk with my hands. You have to work with the tools, and you have to want and have that desire to change. And that can only come from within you.
So I know you talk quite a bit about law of attraction, and just for those that kind of know it just by the title or some of the, sort of the characterizations of it, how is it that you define that?
So I really use the dictionary definition of law of attraction, which is to cause something to come into place for you. It's basically you're making something happen. A lot of people, I think, they hear this word attract, right? And they think that means that you're going to something is magically going to appear in place without you having caused that to happen. So, for example, we have websites, right? And what do? We attract visitors to our websites. Now, does that mean that we just put a website up and we say, I'm going to think really hard about people coming and visiting my website? No, we are going to cause people to visit our website. We're going to make the website attractive. Going to lure people. We're going to entice people. We're going to make it mesmerizing. We're going to tempt them in some way to come and check out our website. And so that is what attracting is. It's about making yourself, or whatever it is, that it's making yourself so irresistible that the thing that you want will be attracted to you, whether it's attracting a job, whether it's attracting a mate, whether it's attracting new customers into your business. And so this law of attraction is really about applying these principles. I like to call them in my book conditions for manifesting. And it's, I'm kind of exposing a little bit more of the truth about the work that you need to do as a person to make law of attraction actually work for you. Because here's the thing, a lot of people got their initial understanding and exposure to law of attraction through the hit movie The Secret, which most people have heard of by now. And the way that movie portrays law of attraction is wonderful. First of all, I love that movie. I watch it because it's very inspirational, and but it has holes in it, because the way that they have to work within the confines of 2 hours to explain this kind of complex topic.
Yeah, I'd share my moment was the person talking about, I use this everywhere. When I pull into a parking lot, I use The Secret to find a parking space. And sure enough, one always opens up. And I did find myself yelling at the television. That's how parking lots work.
Right. But it's like the vision I always have when I'm having this conversation is the woman who's looking at the beautiful, probably six-figure necklace, and at the jewelry store, and she's like focusing on this necklace, and the next thing you know, the next day somebody's putting it around her neck, and it's like, whoa,
there's more steps there.
Or the kid who's looking at the bicycle, and the next thing the bicycle shows up on his on his front porch. And these kinds of ideas, they give people a lot of false hope that you can just wish out there to the genie and attract your desires. And it doesn't, there are steps in between. And people have these very flippant desires, that come and go, and they're not really committed to these desires. They're just like wishing that something is going to happen, but they're not actually committed. And I really believe that attracting something into your life, attracting something deliberately. I mean, we attract things all the time. We're always like, if you're in a kind of a nasty mood one day, you're probably going to attract a little bit of a bad day, because, that's sort of how the reticular activating system works. It's going to filter out things that are that are not in alignment with what you are focused on, what you're believing. And same thing with your subconscious mind. I mean, and that's the other part of this missing piece for so many people in being a hypnotherapist. Nothing is going to happen. Absolutely nothing is going to happen until you get your desire lined up with the beliefs in your subconscious mind. You got to get the beliefs in your subconscious mind aligned with your desire, what it is that you want. And people that just kind of spend 30 days with like, okay, I'm going to manifest $1 million. Well, have you ever manifested $20? We got to start there. We got to get a little bit into the, we got to get a little bit of confidence going with the fact that you can manifest what you desire to create. So that's why I wrote this book called Practical Law of Attraction, because that is really the key word in this whole thing. Is it's the practical things that you can do to make this law of attraction actually work to your benefit.
What I love inside of that is it starting from a place where somebody has, let's call it out, a misconception of the process, a idea that's not quite exactly what it is, which really is that foot in the door to open up a dialogue and explain it in a much more direct way and explain, here's how in some way you're already doing this, and here's how you can do it better, which that right there is the exact same conversation we would use as hypnotists too.
It really is. There's a lot of misconceptions, as you're well aware of, about what hypnosis is. And the people that don't believe in hypnosis, they don't believe in hypnosis because they don't really understand what it is and how it works. And I say the exact same thing to people who don't believe in the law of attraction. I do come up with many people who say, oh, that's just, people get like angry about the law of attraction. And it's like, look, I get it. It's just because it hasn't been explained to you how to actually use it the right way. And, it's not magic. Manifesting is not magic. Are there magical moments that do arise when, there's this, one of my favorite quotes, and I actually just pulled my book up here. Okay, so here's, to me, like, this is like the essence of law of attraction. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves to. And, and that's where, when you hear that providence moves to, and there's like a whole other extra paragraph to that. But, when, you've had these kind of coincidences and synchronicities and things like that happen, that is like the whipped cream on, the everything else that you've already done to put everything into place. There are those little magical instances that can arise when you have like definitely committed yourself to do everything in your power that you need to do. But the thing is most people are not committed. They're not committed like a prisoner is committed to get out of prison.
Well, you mentioned things to do. You mentioned actions for commitment. What are some of those examples of things to actually activate these and turn them into something?
So the first thing, and when I say first, I don't mean in a linear process. I just mean, one of the most important things is to get in touch with what it is that you specifically want and focus on that one thing. Because, so many times people, they're focused on, I want a relationship, I want to lose weight, I want to attract money, I want a new business. They're focused on, their focus is divided into too many different things, and they're not committed to focusing on just one very specific thing. So that's the first thing, is to really define for yourself, what is it that you are committed to be really specific about that you would like to manifest. So that's one thing. Another thing is being committed to giving up a certain way of thinking that is not supporting you. People really love complaining, love complaining, and hopefully my husband will never listen to this podcast, but I know last
There's an
night,
introduction.
we're out for a walk, and I'm telling him like, God, everything's great. This is just, talking about my book, number one, talking about, 3 interviews today and going to do this and going to do that. And I'm just like, life is great, and then he tells me about his situation at the grocery store and how this person, did this and that person did that, and I'm like, and I'm like, so what good happened today? And the thing is you have to be committed to what thoughts are you thinking about? Are you thinking thoughts that are designed to and very meticulously aimed at getting what you want, or are you more committed to gossiping and talking about how bad it is and having a competition with, who's had the worst day ever, and, that kind of thing. So those are a couple of things. But obviously, it takes much more than that. I mean, you have to be willing to put some skin in the game, and you have to be willing to take action, and inspired action at that. Not just, you could be taking lots and lots of actions, but if the actions that you're taking are not in alignment with what maybe your intuition is telling you that you really need to do, and I do talk about paying attention to the inner voice, which Lord knows where that comes from. Maybe it comes from infinite intelligence, super conscious. Who knows where that voice comes from? But you need to take a look at what that inner voice is saying to you and act on those things. Because if you're just kind of like not willing to listen to that inner voice, and you're taking action, and those actions are not the correct actions that are leading you towards success, then eventually you're going to burn yourself out and give up on your goal and say, oh, this doesn't work.
So then, speaking of setting a goal towards a specific action and following through with it, what was that thought process to write the book?
So as far as what was my thought process?
Yes.
Like when it was interesting because I always wanted to write a book, and I've written little books, like that I give away on my website. You're familiar with those kinds of books. And so I never wrote like a serious book that I was angling to become a #1 best-selling book. And so there were a couple of things that kind of came about in the process of writing this book. Number one, if you'd asked me this time last year if I was going to write a book in 2018, I would have said, no way, you're crazy. There's not a chance that I'm writing a book this year. As a matter of fact, a dear client of mine said, Victoria, you really, really need to write a book. That's your next step. And I just see it for you. I see this vision. I see you writing a book. I'm like, no, I don't have time. I have zero time for that. Another person, tells me, Victoria, you need to write a book on law of attraction, blah, 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 and I had so many different, because I've sort of developed myself as someone known in this law of attraction space. A lot of people are always asking me questions about how to make law of attraction work. And I'm constantly answering these questions. And I have various different products for them, but I just didn't have like the place to put them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so all of these things. And then I was invited to create a certification training at a specific hypnosis convention. And I'm like, well, I don't have a curriculum designed for that. And so it just
that's always a great thing when someone else says, you're really good at this. Can you do something with it? And you're going, oh, yeah, I should.
Exactly. And I'm like, I don't have so then I'm like, well, I guess it's time to sit down and write that book.
Yeah.
And, one of my mentors who I got certified in law of attraction through, one of the several, is a gentleman by the name of Michael Lozier, who wrote a book actually a couple of years before The Secret came out. His book is pretty popular, called Law of Attraction. And so he's kind of been a little mentor of mine. I shouldn't say a little mentor. He's a big mentor of mine. And it was really interesting because I was interviewing him on my podcast, and somehow or another, our conversation turned into how to write a book. And he was giving me all these tips on how to write a book. And the tips that he gave me just shaped my book so quickly that I really just started all filling in all the missing pieces that I had, and I was able to really quickly kind of get my content how I needed it. And I realized after he told me just to, the first tip that he gave me was just make your Word document 6 by 9 instead of 8.5 by 11, because your book's not going to be 8.5 by 11. So you think that you haven't written enough pages yet, but when you put it into 6 by 9, you'll realize how many pages. And he told me, to write like 150-page book, and I tried to keep it 150 pages, just so it fits in a certain size envelope, and shipping would be less expensive and all that kind of stuff. And I tried to adhere to that, but the book just sort of took off and wrote itself.
See, I like the opposite. I wrote mine in 8.5 by 11, just standard Word document. Then it got formatted to 5 by 8, and I'm like, ooh, I just went from 96 pages to 262. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, our book is about the same size. Mine's 269 pages. Yeah. So yeah, it was like really interesting to, because then, because my book does have some illustrations, and, each section has its own like little divider. So it's like when you actually sit down and format your book, you kind of realize, wow, if I had been going the way I was going, I would have written a 500-page book. And you find in hindsight, I'm sure this happened to you too, you find like, oh, I should have put that in my book. I should have put that in my book.
Oh yeah, it's already happening. Yeah.
So part 2 coming soon. No, I really feel like the next one is going to be more of a niche, because again, I really like focusing on entrepreneurs, even more specifically digital marketers like myself. And so I feel like, wow, what a neat combination to, come out in the future with law of attraction for digital entrepreneurs or something like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That setting that sort of landmarker in terms of this is who I am, this is what I do, and then getting specific from there. The same way that here's the hypnotist that, perhaps does begin, as many of us would, as the generalist, but then starts to branch out into very specific categories, because that's what we have the passion of helping. And just to call it out, that's what, when we have that passion, bringing that law of attraction side of it, now that's that thing that we do the best work with.
Exactly. Yes, it really is. And you only get better and better at that because you're not dividing your energy and dividing your focus into, having to be the jack of all trades and know so many things. I almost get scared now of anybody who does so many different things, even when it comes to marketing, oh yeah, I do the website and the advertising and it's like, don't you like have one thing that you're like really, really good at? And, and I really, that's a lot about what this book also helps people to discover. Cause it's, so much of this book is really about personal growth. And that's always been my philosophy with attracting things is, look, you're going to attract things that are at your level of being able to attract, like whatever you are, wherever you are, however you are being, that's what you're ready for in your life. If you're, at a certain level, if you're at a certain level in your job, you're not going to attract the job of a CEO if you're the janitor. You're going to attract what you are lined up with. And so that's, when it comes to being able to manifest your dreams and create your life, it's really about self-empowerment, and whatever self-empowerment work that you've done on yourself. I have, and I rarely ever speak to these parts of my book that I need to actually bring up. But I have, in addition to these 8 manifesting conditions, I also have in section 4 is the qualities. And I talk about the 16 qualities that help you to become, kind of a more magnetic person. Integrity, having awareness, having a good attitude, all of these things are obviously going to open up doors and new opportunities for you.
Beautiful. And so the book is Practical Law of Attraction, and we'll link to that in the show notes over at worksmarthypnosis.com. And as I like to say, this is not a hypnosis podcast that pretends that other hypnosis podcasts don't exist. So tell us about your program.
Absolutely. Okay. So I also have a podcast, which has been attracting some pretty cool guests lately, including yourself, Jason,
Hey.
called Power of Your Mind podcast. And I, came up with that idea actually, couple years ago. A girlfriend of mine came up. She has these little mini meditations on her podcast, and I was just looking at her podcast and her Instagram that goes with it, and I was like, "Oh, that looks neat. That looks fun. I want to do that." It was just sort of like fun, and I thought, well, what would I talk about? And of course, I originally I was just doing the podcast myself, and it was. It was challenging week after week, coming up with new material, new content, that I need to, talk about. It's like, it's fine, the first 12 or 24 episodes you have, but then you just kind of like, well, I talked about that and I talked about that. And so I attracted my first guest, somebody reached out to me, and it was somebody that it was Christy Whitman, who was just somebody that I looked at. She was somebody I kind of looked up to, and I was like, I was just so surprised when somebody reached out to me and said, "Yeah, we want to have Christy Whitman be on your podcast." And it all of a sudden the lights went on. I was like, "Oh yeah, I could ask other people to to be on my show." And once I did that, it just really, you have them tell you what they want to talk about. They pretty much supply most of the content, and you just say and you ask them the questions, and and on top of that, I learn. And
exactly.
That's the cool thing is just yesterday, the lady that I was interviewing for my podcast, it was just so fun. I just, and when you and I had our conversation, you learn something through these. So it's the Power of Your Mind podcast, and it's just about inspiring you in learning how to use, of course, the power of your mind. It's all things power of your mind. We talk about hypnosis. We talk about law of attraction. We talk about affirmations, meditation, just anything self-empowerment that makes you feel good and makes you feel that you can do it and have that belief in yourself. And that's what I'm here to do.
Outstanding. So we'll link to that too. And just where can people find you in general?
So in general, I've got 35 websites.
We do, yeah.
Why don't we list them? No. So my main website that where, all of my hypnosis recordings is hyptalk.com. It's spelled with a Y, like hypnosis, hyptalk.com. And you can also learn more about my book at practicallawofattractionbook.com. So I'm sure, we could make a whole other show where I could list all my websites. Trying to actually get them all streamlined off to one website right now. So I'll leave that for another time.
Yeah. So leave us with one of the tips. What's one strategy that people can put into use to start to create these actions in their lives?
So, the biggest tip really is knowing what you want and being very specific and committed to that, and getting your thoughts, your imagination, and your beliefs all lined up with that. And knowing that you absolutely are going to have to take action on those things, and you will be inspired to take the necessary actions by lining up your thoughts, your beliefs with what it is that you desire to create specifically in your life.
Jason Linett here once again, and as always, thank you so much for interacting with this program as we're setting this up in the future thanks to automation and systems. It was great seeing a lot of you at the HPTI Winter Hypnosis Convention. And once again, to start to really build your own success in this career, in this profession, head over to hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. That's where you can check out the all-access pass to Hypnotic Business Systems, done-for-you marketing campaigns, step-by-step tutorials to activate your business. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Model what works. Check that out. hypnoticbusinesssystems.com, with a thriving online community as well to get the support you need to build your own success. See you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast at worksmarthypnosis.com.
Hey, it's Jason here, and I want you to be the first to find out as we upload new content here online. So do this right now. Click subscribe right next to this video, and you will be the first to find out as I share further resources, further downloads, and other really cool things to come your way. See you soon.